Hello class, welcome to the subtractive charcoal drawing demo. The first thing we want to do is create a 9 by 12 inch rectangle in the center of our 14 by 17 canvas multimedia drawing pad. And we'll just do that by, again, measuring twice, cutting once. If you measure at 2.5 inches at the bottom, 2.5 inches across the top, draw a line, do it again, 2.5 inches here, 2.5 inches at the top along the top edge of the paper, connect that line, and then do it from the bottom again along the lines you just drew there. Do it again at the top, do it again here, do it again here, and we're effectively measuring twice and able to then cut once, and we get really nice, straight, perfect rectangle in the center of our page. So subtractive drawing involves toning the page with a 50% gray, and then we use our erasing tools to remove highlights and identify forms. And then we finish it with additive methods. So I'm going to take my vine charcoal, which is a round stick. I have some more here. It can look like this. I have these big thick pieces, which is very handy for this technique. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to tone my whole page, my whole picture plane here with about a 50% gray. So I'm going to really get it on there pretty good. Working it pretty well evenly across the surface. And then I'm going to take a piece of paper towel or a rag, and I'm just going to lightly push that around. It will get a little lighter when you do this. But by doing this, it just smooths it out a little bit for you, removes some of that texture, and helps make it a little bit more even. Now, don't press too hard. If you press too hard, you'll push it into the paper. And we want it to still be loose enough that it comes off when we erase it. Now, I need to add a little bit more here just to make it nice and even. Sometimes it feels like you're, putting nails on a chalkboard, so if you're getting the heebie-jeebies, it's all right. Get that nice and even. And I want it to be about 50% gray when I'm done. So that still feels a bit light. So I'm going to push a little bit harder. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Now I'll just smooth that out one more time. And that should be ready to go. If you want to protect your edges, you can get some masking tape, and you could tape the edges of your paper off, and you could keep them nice and clean. So we're going to go ahead and redraw the image that I have on the screen and in the Canvas page. It looks a little something like this. So we're going to redraw that. That was a little still life I set up here at my house. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw a little bit differently than we're used to. Typically, we would start by just drawing, outlines of our objects through gesture. But what I want us to do today is to really try and see the shapes that the highlights make and figure out what those shapes are, and then we're going to block those shapes in. So we're kind of shifting the way we see value here. We really want to think about, those shapes that the highlights make and the shadows make and the different values make, and get away from the idea that everything has to be drawn as an outline or a contour line. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the placement of my sphere, because the sphere in the image is about the focal point. So I'm going to make sure I get that right on a rule of thirds. So I'm going to kind of give myself some imaginary guidelines and think, where's that rule of thirds? So it's about here. And I'm going to start to just remove. You can shape your kneaded eraser into different shapes here. And I'm going to sort of block in the shape that I see that making. Notice I'm not doing any outlines. I'm just thinking about the shape here. Okay. Now I can go over to, and I'm just doing the highlights at the beginning, the areas. Any area lighter than this mid-tone gray is where I'm gonna start to erase. I can put in the cone here. And I'm just blocking in those areas that are lighter. I'm not doing the shadows or anything. And if I lighten up my pressure, I can do some transitions into some midtones as well. And I'll improve this along the way. I'm just trying to get sort of the basic info here. Go ahead, I'm going to cut down around this sphere here so I can get that light part of the cube visible. I'd say the top is still a little bit lighter than that mid-tone, so I'm going to block that in a little bit here as well. Reform my eraser for a better erase as a better shape for this. I can darken that back up when I need to. I can also, if I really want to put some elbow grease, I can come in here and erase my highlights a little bit more with my white plastic eraser. But the right plastic eraser often leaves like eraser shavings on it, and the kneaded eraser should do that a lot less. Mine's a little bit old, so it's kind of coming apart a little bit. But if it gets a little messy, what you can do is it's kind of like gum, so you can kind of reform it into the shapes and clean things up a little bit. Okay, so I'm noticing I'm making things a little bit bigger than they need to be. So that just means I made some mistakes. Hey, that's okay, that happens. It's really easy to fix them. All I have to do is retone that area. And now I've effectively erased that part of my drawing, and I can go ahead and fix the things that are not correct. Yeah, I think I brought this down a little too far, so I'm going to lift that up. And then I can come and give myself just a couple guidelines here so I know where the edge of that goes. And then I need to bring in my sphere, which feels a little... Yeah, I think I made the circle a little far to the right. I think maybe I needed to shift all of that over just a little bit more. I feel like I should have probably had the center of the sphere right there. So I'm going to go ahead and just do that real quick. Just quick retone, and then I'm going to move this sphere over a little bit more so it's more centralized here. by the third. Let's go back out and remove that shape a little bit. Then I can go ahead and bring my cube back into business here. Again, just bringing out those shapes that the highlights make and the lights make. So I have a couple little guidelines there to help me go, so I know where I'm going to place my objects. And then, yeah, my kneaded eraser is really shedding in it. I think I do need to make that a little bit shorter there, which probably means I can bring that over a little bit, which means I can bring that line over a little bit then too. And then that'll give me a little bit more room here for my cylinder. And I'll just bring that highlight over to the edge of the core shadow here on the cylinder. And then I'll really try and just bring out my highlights here pretty good. Get my white plastic eraser involved in this. One other tool I like to have as an artist is just a little eraser brush, a little brush to brush things out of the way that you don't need. Not that you have to have that, but you could use something like that, or use a paintbrush or something if that's helpful. I do like to use my detail eraser as well quite often, especially to add details. So I can really, let's see, I think I need to adjust this top of this cone here a little bit. I think I want the cone to go about to here, and this detail eraser will help me get that point really well. You can also really focus your kneaded eraser down into a point for that, or you can kind of use one of your edges here as well. Sometimes I'll take a scissors or a blade and like cut this into some detail shapes as well. So just kind of pulling out those shapes of the highlights, refining here as I go, refining these edges to correct the shapes, the form's shape a little bit. You can find these types of, they're called pen erasers. You can find these pen erasers on Amazon or at Dick Blick, and they can be really handy. If you're planning on being an artist and doing more art classes, then I highly recommend getting one of these. They're very convenient. Okay. So we're looking pretty good here. Like I've got the basis of all this going. I'm noticing my line here is a little bit crooked. I stood back and I could see that, so I'm just going to fix that here by molding this into a good shape, and then I'm going to try and redraw that line and get it a little bit straighter. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Now that I pretty much have my highlights mapped in here pretty good, I do have a little bit of reflected light down here. So I'm going to bring that in here at the bottom. Let's see, let's really strengthen that edge. Let's really strengthen my edges of my cube here. Clarify this corner. I'll go ahead and kind of just erase that zone here. This does get a little bit lighter, I think, so I'm going to work that a little bit. I might even be able to use my kneaded eraser. Sometimes they are not the kneaded eraser, but the blending stump will sometimes pick up a little bit of your charcoal, and it'll help identify those mid-tones and kind of push some things around for you, which can be handy. Ultimately, I think the foreground's going to be a little bit lighter. One cool thing you can do with the kneaded eraser is it can act like a stamp, which can be nice for adding some texture. And so I could kind of just try and lighten this up a little bit while adding a little bit of texture here, just to lighten that up, that foreground texture up just a little bit. I do have a big old cast shadow here from this sphere, so I'm going to just kind of make sure I don't mess with that at all. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. There is a strong highlight that wraps right around there as well. Kind of continues a little bit on the bottom too. And now we're looking pretty good on the reductive part. So now you can come in with your additive method and additive tools, and you can start to refine the drawing. So I can come in with my charcoal pencil. I can come in with my compressed charcoal. Remember, that's a square or rectangle. You can do some drawing with the vine charcoal too, for some lighter area values, but I like to just go right in with the charcoal pencil or the compressed charcoal and just start building up the surface. So let's go ahead and begin. I'll go ahead and just start working on this sphere a little bit. And then you can then go ahead and get started on yours if you haven't done so already. Y'all haven't seen me draw a sphere yet because I left that one out of the last form drawing. So I guess it's time. So I've got this core shadow right here. Really want to make that dark. Notice it's the darkest right here at this sort of where the equator of the sphere really just kind of drops off. And then it starts to lighten back up a little bit towards the edge, where there's some reflected light coming from the other objects and from the surface of the table. And I'm just going to slowly build this stuff up here over time. One thing I really like about charcoal is it just gets really good darks. Things get really dark very quickly. Although sometimes the charcoal pencils aren't all that, they're not created equal sometimes. Sometimes some work really good, sometimes others don't work that good. So I'm going to do a quick sharpen here of a different charcoal pencil and see if that one is a little bit smoother for me at all. Okay, go ahead and watch the demonstration for how to sharpen your charcoal pencil in this module. That's really important to make sure you sharpen your charcoal pencil correctly and not cut yourself or hurt yourself. I like to use the blade and the sandpaper because it gets it really, really sharp. And then also sometimes your little handheld sharpener will break it, and that's super annoying when it keeps breaking it all the time. Okay, yeah, this is applying much smoother. I like this one better. I recommend getting a handful of, if you're going to really be a charcoal artist or a drawer, I recommend getting a bunch of charcoal pencils just so you have some variety. So I'm starting to think about these value edges here between, say, the sphere and the light face of the cube. In the background, I'm going to put my paper down here so I don't get charcoal all over my hand, which I started to do. That'll help prevent you from smudging charcoal later elsewhere. Okay, that coarse shadow really wraps around here at the top, and then it kind of flattens out and kind of fades out a little bit down towards the bottom. And then we do have the occlusion down here, and then the cast shadow. I like to just edit my sphere along the way to get it like actually circular. It can be tricky to draw a circle right out the gate, so I usually just try and start relatively conservatively and just slowly grow it until it feels, correct. Establishing this cast shadow is going to be handy for defining the edge of the sphere. And then I can kind of then know where the value edge is with that sphere, right? Notice no outlines here. It's just where two different values meeting. And then I can pull this down in here to be the reflected light. And then now I need to start to feather out my values into the highlights. So I'm going to start to feather this coarse shadow into my lights and then ultimately my highlight. The highlight is pretty much like, it's kind of from like here towards the edge. So I'm just going to give myself a light guideline here to make sure I don't accidentally draw into that. I'm probably going to have to lighten it up with my eraser because I made it a little too dark, but that way you can see it. And I'll just lighten it up with my eraser a little bit later. Now I've got to draw very lightly to get these midtones to read and not go too dark fast. So hold the hold your pencil back here and just let the weight of that charcoal pencil build up the surface, and that'll help give you those really soft value applications. Okay, I think I'm ready to sort of erase this. I'm going to use my detail eraser for this. I think I'm ready to erase that guideline there. It's kind of getting in the way. Blow that out. Now, to get the highlight to really pop, I need to draw the cone edge here so I can darken the shadows on the cone. And then that's going to really push the edge of my sphere forward. It's really strong occlusion right here. So I can kind of get that going. And then the background is very dark. So I can start to make a little contour line there to help me define that edge. Probably good for me to step back a little bit, especially on the circular edge. Sorry, you're probably looking at my head now, but I need to look at it to make sure I get that right. And then I am going to really push that edge, that dark value, nice and deep, so it really pushes forward my sphere. That's what we mean, right, by creating that value edge here, right? There's no outlines anymore. It's all just where a dark meets a light. If you want to speed up some of the drawing process in these dark areas, then I recommend, use your charcoal, your compressed charcoal stump, and then that can really speed that up. And what I love about drawing with the charcoal stump is you can take one of the corners of the rectangle and use that as a guideline. Take that long edge to make a nice long straight line, and it really helps make your line straighter. It's almost like using a ruler. And then I can do that anywhere where I have this deep dark shadow, and it just really helps me make that edge nice and strong. Yeah, I think I messed that up a little bit, so I need to adjust my line edge here a little bit to make that feel more, just the more correct proportions. So I still think I have some work to do there, but that's all right. I'll go ahead and fix that later. Charcoal is very forgiving. You can get away with a lot and remove things and then bring it back. It's a bit of a squirrely medium, so it's quite, loose and takes some time to get used to. But once you get used to it and understand it, it becomes a very, very strong tool for drawing because of all of that flexibility, the deep, dark values that it provides, the sort of expressive mark making that it can produce. All right, that's looking a little bit better. Not quite perfect, but closer. All right, now by doing the background, right, I'm really pushing my objects in the foreground much further. So now I can start to really refine my objects, improve my volumes, and complete this drawing. All right, folks, I think that's probably good enough demonstration for you to go ahead and get going. I look forward to seeing your results of your drawings. I guess one other thing you can do, which I haven't mentioned, but you'll learn soon enough anyway, you can use your blending stump to help smooth out some of your values. I go over this in the additive drawing demo quite a bit. So I like to use it a lot in the backgrounds because it just helps smooth out the background. So it takes away the texture from the background, and then that'll leave the texture in the foreground, which will then help make your drawing move forward in space and the background recede to the background. So yeah, that is subtractive drawing. So go ahead and get started. Have some fun. Notice it is very dirty. I'm picking up a lot of charcoal dust here, so I'm getting it all over my hands. So make sure to clean up well after you're done. All right, folks, enjoy. Have fun drawing. Look forward to seeing your results.